It's the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Here's your host, Matthew Ablin.
Happy New Year, and welcome to episode 82 of the Queen City Music Podcast. This episode of the QCMP is sponsored by Midwood Guitar Studio, Charlotte, North Carolina's own boutique guitar shop located in Plaza Midwood. Midwood Guitar Studio not only has the finest selection in boutique guitars, but familiar names like Fender, Martin, Taylor, True Rock, and many others. Whether it's a guitar, bass, amp, effects pedal, or a much-needed accessory, the knowledgeable and friendly staff at Midwood Guitar Studio will help guide you in the right direction for your next purchase. And Midwood Guitar Studio also has a luthier on staff for all your repair needs. Visit their website at midwoodguitarstudio.com or stop in to see their unique shop at 1517 Central Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina. By the way, if you have a business and would like to become a sponsor of the podcast, like our friends at Midwood Guitar Studio, drop me a line at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com and I'll discuss all the information with you. Also, if you enjoy the podcast and would like to find out more about me, stop by MatthewAblin.com. There you'll find links to my events calendar, performance groups, the latest podcast episodes, and a host of other information. Once again, Happy New Year, and I hope 2025 is off to a great start for you. This month on episode 82 of the QCMP, Greazy Keyz is back, and this time he's in the studio. The last time he was featured on the podcast was back in 2020 on episode 33, and we needed to do a virtual interview as the pandemic had just started. He's had a lot going on in the last few years, and I've asked him back to fill us in. Greazy Keyz, welcome back to the Queen City Music Podcast.
Hey, thank you so much, Matthew. It's a pleasure to be back here after a few years.
Dude, yeah. I mean, I was talking to you earlier about it, and it's so funny. The last time we was on was 4 years ago.
Wow.
It was episode 33, so if you haven't listened to episode 33, we're not going into Jason's whole background and stuff today. You need to kind of go check that episode out, and he'll fill you in on that.
Please do. Please do. This is like part 2, right?
Yeah, exactly. 4 years later, though, man. I feel like it's a Star Wars follow-up. Oh,
really
20
is.
years later, I'm back on.
The Greazy Keyz, the epic. The trilogy.
Oh, man. Oh, we'll do it. All right.
No doubt.
Man. 4 years from now, let's see what things are.
We'll be rocking and rolling.
So just as a quick reminder to folks, how'd you come up with the moniker Greazy Keyz?
So Greazy Keyz, actually, from very modest beginnings, about 27 years ago,
Wow.
I was establishing I'd always been committed to being a musician.
Mm-hmm.
That was always been my goal in life, and I made that deal with myself when I was a teenager. But first coming out, I wanted to honestly just create an email, an email handle.
Okay.
So I'd already had Jason Atkins at Yahoo, and I wanted to have a separate email for business,
Yeah.
for musical business. And so I just kind of came up with Greazy Keyz as something, so it didn't have to be Jason Atkins 1 2 3 4 5 at Yahoo.
Right.
Just as something just kind of unique to sort of set itself apart.
Yes, sir.
And greasy, not necessarily meaning dirty or greasy, but greasy as in, a style, of, Southern culture, with like funk and jazz and rock and roll. That to me sort of incorporates a greasy sort of attitude that, I really try to emote through my music, through my approach of playing the keyboards. So that was where it kind of came from, just as an email handle.
That's awesome, man. And it stuck,
Yeah,
and
it did.
Stuck.
And so before I was even the organist for, the Charlotte Checkers or anyone, some of my musician friends had, who I'd communicate with through email, started calling me Greazy. So it was already, it was an early nickname, early on. I've had a few nicknames over my career, but, that was the one that was, favored.
Do you get people like, we'll get into all the stuff you're doing,
Sure.
but do you get people, you walking in the street or maybe you're playing somewhere and they just walk up to you as if they've seen you before? And
Absolutely.
They're like, hey, Greazy. And you're like,
Yes.
hey, what's going on?
Absolutely. And so many people are don't even know my real name.
Yeah.
Which is, fun.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives it, the persona just sort of gives it more attention, and I'm totally fine with that,
Right.
And absolutely people are drawn to it and have made a connection with it that, if I don't know them personally, they can still interact with me as though we're good friends, and
Yeah.
I'm receptive to it.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about it again. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and that, the moniker, the last time I saw you was, like I said, 4 years ago on the podcast. And I get the feeling, as I said, not that the podcast had something to do with it, but the personality or the persona of Greazy Keyz has really grown in the last few years.
Yes.
And think some of that's got to do with some of the things that you've been doing in town. So like most people might know you as the organist for the Charlotte Checkers.
Right.
Before we get into all the other stuff, again, how did that hookup happen with the Charlotte Checkers? You know,
it's just one of those moments of being at the right place at the right time. And, you know, any musician, you know, worth their salt, you know, you stay prepared, you know, for any opportunities. And I've never turned down an opportunity. You know, if I could possibly do it, I will do a gig. I will do 2 gigs. You know, I will double, triple up if I can, just because, as you know, it's not easy as a musician. And especially in a market like Charlotte where, you know, it's a vibrant musical community, but it's not seen as a musical town. Right. So a lot of times it takes being diversified. And so, it just happened to be where the Checkers, now the history of the Checkers, let me take it back, but it started in the mid 50s, you know, with the original Charlotte Coliseum. The Checkers were a very early institution, a part of that. And, they had a Hammond C3 installed into the Coliseum back then.
Gotcha.
And it was my understanding that was played by like literally the little old lady. Her name was Doris Morgan. So you had Doris Morgan on the organ from the 50s up until the 90s.
Okay.
Right, when she finally retired. And so the Checkers, I think, then they moved from the Coliseum to Bobcats Arena, or Spectrum Center as it's called now.
Right.
And were there for about 10 years. And then in 2015, CRVA decided to upfit the now Bojangles Coliseum. And so the Checkers were going to move back in. And so then they wanted to bring the element back. And originally they reached out to my good friend Jessica Bornius, who's a fantastic keyboard player, who she was giving lessons to some of the front office staff's kids.
Okay.
You know, and so that was, you know, obviously the front office wanted to have an organist, didn't know who to reach out to. So they reached out to the person nearest to them, Jessica.
Sure.
And she was like, yeah, sure, I'd be interested, but I probably don't have the availability to do all the games. So she just happened to reach out to me, said, hey, Jason, would you be interested in playing the organ for the Checkers? And I'm like, yes, that sounds so cool. And so we made some time and went in and, met with the front office folks there and more or less just auditioned. And walking into the Coliseum, now I had been to maybe a Checkers game or two, you know, before, and that was even before they had moved to the Bobcats Arena. But at the time, I don't recall there being a live organist. But walked in, and at the corner of the rink was this vintage Hammond C3 organ.
Oh, sweet.
And which for organ players is sort of like the king. It's like, you know, any keyboard player worth their salt, you know, wants to play on a Hammond organ. You know, and a C3 is related to the B3, which you may have heard of, which was made famous by like, you know, Greg Allman. You know, you hear it in every style of music of American music in the past 60 years, you know, whether it's gospel or rock or jazz or whatever, you hear the Hammond organ, whether you know it or not. And so to see that sitting there, I knew this was going to be a gig for me.
Nice.
And, you know, because even to turn it on, it's not a simple power switch, you know, it's a series of buttons and switches that you have to hold in an order, and they sort of power up the tone wheel generator. Sat down and played a little tune or so, and they were like, yes, this is awesome. This is what we want. So that very first season, I actually split the games between me and Jessica.
Okay.
I was Greazy Keyz because they asked me, do you have any fun nicknames that we could use for your jerseys? And I was like, yep, I'll be Greazy Keyz.
Oh, they gave you a jersey?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
and
great.
she was a little bit. So, and I think she still has a jersey. We'll have to ask her that. But yeah, so the very first season, she and I kind of split the games.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got the opening night and I decided, you know, to, you know, I thought about how was I going to really incorporate myself into the game, you know, and cause, you know, you have Chubby the Bear, the mascot. And I wanted to be something that was engaging that way. So I literally just like, you know, put my sunglasses on. So that to me was like my Joe Cool moment, you know, like you have from Snoopy, and then Snoopy puts the sunglasses on and he becomes Joe Cool. So you have Jason, I put on the sunglasses, I become Greazy Keyz, right?
That's great.
So that first season was a lot of fun. Learned a lot about hockey, and kind of get a feel for the game. Mm-hmm. And right away, it was just so cool to start engaging with fans, because there are a lot of season ticket holders who come year after year, game after game, who now this is my 10th season.
Wow.
As Greazy Keyz, that, and now it really is an integral part of the game. Like, people do come up and want to pay a visit or come hang out in the Grease pit near right behind me. And that's, an element of the game that, they tell me, it's not the same without it. So
that's great.
It's just been amazing.
You've kind of brought the music back into the game.
Yes.
So I'm curious though, what was and what is your learning curve? What do you have to do? Did anybody explain, like, what do you have to do, or what songs they want? Or is that something that you come up with?
Well, it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Honestly, they're coming from a different mindset. They're not necessarily thinking about what particular songs or what particular music that they want. So that kind of falls on my shoulders. But it's more a matter of learning the flow of the game. And so say if the team is up, what the level of energy I need to help maintain. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I do kind of play off of the DJ, because, the DJ always brings high level energy, because they can bring in any song by any artist,
right?
Whereas the organ, there is some limitations. Obviously, it's the sound of the organ. And I've learned how to incorporate some backbeats and some tracks as well to help sort of elevate my energy level. But it's I'm always having to have like 2 or 3 songs in the queue, totally dependent on the ebb and the flow of the game. So if the team goes down or something kind of negative happens, I'll have something queued up for that to help maybe bring the energy back up with the fans.
Gotcha.
Or if it's really high up, I try to find something that helps me maintain it,
Gotcha.
Or if I know, well, here's a great moment to interact with the fans, where get them to clapping, so I'll play something really simple like the Let's Go Checkers.
Right.
That's always my fallback, because that's one way to always have the fans immediately engage with clapping.
Yeah.
And so they're a part of the music in the moment.
Did you do some research? Like, did you watch other organ players, like,
yes,
or gotten sports and seen what clips of stuff that they did and
absolutely
how you do it?
And I still do. Luckily, there is a great community of professional sports organists.
Seriously.
And they have a name called Sonata, and it's like it's an acronym for sports organists of something or other. But anyway, but we have a little Facebook group, and we also keep in touch, via Instagram and Twitter or X, and it's very supportive. And I'm learning and watching and seeing how they approach it, because every team and every game is different. I mean, I do have a repertoire, and I've grown literally probably thousands of songs.
Yeah.
And it could be entire songs, it could be just snippets of songs, hooks, things like that. But yeah, every game I still try to incorporate something new and continue to grow the repertoire. But I'm always, going back online and seeing what Matt Kaminsky of the Atlanta Braves is doing, or Jeremy Boyer in St. Louis, what he's doing for his teams, and keeping tabs and picking up tricks and picking up ideas from those guys.
How many guys are in the community? Are there?
There's, I don't know how many.
Maybe a couple
total,
hundred?
Not even. I would say about 20.
Oh, wow.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very, very small group, which, a dream for me is to grow that.
Right.
I've experienced inspiring so many young people and so many people, and like, always ask me, how do you do this? How does this happen? How do you get into this? And I say, reach out to your local teams, provide something for them to grow your own career that way, because I think the more organists that can get implemented, just the more joy it brings people.
Yeah.
Because a DJ only can go so far.
Sure.
I mean, DJ can, again, pull from any source musically, but you'll find that if you were to pay attention to go to the mini games, you only hear maybe 20 different songs ever.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got, they do the Metallica, they do the Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah. You got Sandstorm, you got these really big epic, which is great. it's a win. It's,
Sure.
it's going to work.
Yeah.
It's going to bring energy. It's going to be super hype,
Yep.
which, is very important. But people love the engagement of a live musician. And that's another part of it is, you have musicians who are out there playing shows and they draw a certain type of audience.
Sure.
But there are so many other people who don't get that opportunity to go see and hear live music, or maybe just don't take the opportunity.
Right.
But if you offer it to them in a sporting event, they are drawn to it.
Right.
And it fills a void that I don't think people even realize. And I see it game in, game out, whether it's at a baseball game or a hockey game, or, one season I did some Hornets games, and that was amazing too.
Wow.
And basketball, and people love live music. They love that energy that you just cannot get from a DJ.
Yeah.
And this is the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I had Troy Kahn on last month.
Yes.
And we and Troy were talking, and talking about live music is kind of similar to what we were talking about, because I had mentioned, like, have you ever had a night where you thought you played badly and somebody's come up to you and told you how amazing you played?
Yeah.
My point being is that your interpretation of it is not the way somebody else is connecting with it with the audience.
That's true.
And being a live musician, it brings a whole different dynamic that you as the musician are not privy to, because you are not outside your own body. You're in your body playing, but somebody else is just connecting with it on a different level.
Absolutely.
So.
And I can 100% relate to that. And that's something that I've even come to grips with myself, is, oh man, I didn't play that quite right, or, I didn't execute this solo the way I thought I should have.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You're doing it, and you're doing it in a way that no one else can do it. Still in your own voice.
Yep.
And how people relate to it is totally up to them. And I'm lucky that, I would never claim to be the best, but people enjoy the way I play, and I love playing. And so I've learned how to just accept it, just accept it. The moment's gone, be in the moment, don't dwell on what you felt might have been a mistake. And that's another thing about, when you're doing recording sessions. It's like, I love to do a recording session and then maybe not listen to what the track was for a while and then come back to it and then really have a, sort of an outside perspective. It's like, oh yeah, that was a really good take, or that actually, was a lot better than I remember it being inside the studio. So
it's always different. I mean, and every time you do something, it's never the same way,
That's true.
I mean,
for me.
There's this, I forget, Stephen Reich piece. I forget who did it. It's a piece called, classical piece called 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It's not even classical. And he gives you all these directions on how to record the piece or perform the piece. And it's never the same. And it always just reminded me, like, you could play the same song somewhere and you could have in your set every night that you play, but it's never going to be the same, because that audience is never going to be the same.
Yes.
You are never going to feel the same the way that night.
Yeah.
The air is never going to be the same.
That's
it
true.
could be sticky, whatever's going on. It's never going to happen.
It's true.
Can't recreate it.
That's true. And again, that's something I love about playing music. And that's why, I still do an open mic every Tuesday, because it's always different. There's always new people coming in. There's different levels. There's the pros will pop in. You got the amateurs who are there week in, week out, and I'm happy to engage and play with all of them. And it's just for that same moment. It's never going to be the same way twice.
Yeah.
And, you have classical musicians, which I'm not classically trained at all. I'm all ear. I learned by ear, and I taught myself how to read music later on and utilize listening to and picking up music by ear and some sight reading music as well whenever I'm on a gig or at the games. But I never play the same thing twice.
Yeah.
And I love that. I don't strive to play the same exact way twice. And that's why I can still play Brown Eyed Girl.
Yeah.
And enjoy it if someone else is enjoying it,
It's funny you say that. Not to get sidetracked, because I still want to talk about the sports stuff, but I talk to people. I belong to a similar community, but it's solo acoustic players community. There's a lot of guys in there, and it's so funny how I hear people say, I'll never play these songs, and they'll put a list of songs. Yeah. And I'm like, why?
Right.
Because that's what people want to hear.
If you don't want to make people happy.
Yeah.
I mean, and there are people who out there who can get away with not having to play covers, and good for them, you know, and or just strictly original music, and good for them. But for me, I enjoy engaging with people. I don't want to be the lonely guy in the corner playing music that no one understands and no one really cares about. I'm happy to engage with people. And so if people want to hear something, I'm happy to play it.
Yeah, the best compliment I ever get at a gig is I'll look around, even if the place is slow that evening.
Sure.
And I'm looking around and somebody's singing along with one of the tunes I'm doing. I always just smile. I'm like, or somebody's dancing in their seat and they're grooving along. I'm just like, there you go. That makes me happy.
That is. Yeah, I'm the same way. You know, and I always kind of play to the room, and we'll be happy to play in the corner.
Yeah.
You know, but if I see someone tapping their foot, then I know subconsciously I'm reaching someone and they're enjoying it. So.
And you never know who's listening too.
That's the truth.
I mean, somebody come after the gig or during the gig and be like, "Hey, we were looking for a group for my wedding or a private event." And you're like, "Thanks."
Yes.
You know, don't sit there with this sour puss on.
Right.
You know, oh, here, nobody's listening, man. I'm in the corner, and you don't know who's listening.
Right. That's the truth.
You don't know how it's
you
going
really
over.
don't know. And again, you know, from my experience, that's what it's all about, is engaging with people, and it's served me, you know, it's created a living for me. And whether it's translated through playing events, you know, bars, you know, cruises, venues, or sporting events, you know, that to me is the ultimate goal, is to create an experience for somebody. And,
Absolutely.
And obviously being the organist for the sporting team, that's the goal every game. Is, you know, treat every game as though it's someone's first game. Yeah. Because in most cases, it is.
And with the sporting events, just curiously, you're not learning the full song, are you? Are you learning snippets of it? You know, the parts that people are just going to recognize and pick up when you're doing something?
Great question. So, a pleasure for me is, you know, when the sporting event, like whether it's the Checkers game or Kannapolis Cannonballers, the game may start at 7 p.m., but the gates will open at 6. Right. So you'll have a whole hour of pregame. And in most cases, I usually enjoy a nice 20, 30, 40 minute set of me playing music. And then those are instances where I'll get to play entire songs.
Sweet.
So I'll have a song worked up, you know, or maybe even just kind of feel it and pull up some music and play it.
Right.
But then, once the game starts, then it is all about teases. It's, you know, because the pockets of time are literally just seconds. Yeah. Which, it's a little bit different. Obviously, the flow of the game, baseball versus, hockey. You know, with hockey, it's probably less time overall. Right. Whereas with the baseball, you know, I'm playing up opposing team players. So, you know, I have a lot more opportunities to play, but it's always just short little snippets. So that helps keep me intrigued in like, okay, what am I going to play next? And how can I play something that people will engage and recognize within the first few bars?
And when you're doing it, what do you have everything timed? Like, do you know when you're supposed to play and when you're not? Meaning, like after an out or after, let's say we're talking baseball, because I don't know much about hockey. Right. Let's just say after the third out and the team leaves the field, do you know what you know, that's an instant once you're supposed to play, or are there instances?
Well, I would say for every team and every game, there's a rhythm. And I treat it like the ultimate jam session. Okay. It really is. And so you obviously kind of learn the role and the flow of the game. And so you just kind of pick it out. Whereas, you know, with hockey, they'll cue me, okay, we want the organ here during this spot. Okay. Whereas with baseball, honestly, you know, with minor league teams, you know, it's amateurs. Yeah. On every level. Yeah. And so me being the professional, I sort of, you know, I follow the game, but I'll sort of interject as I feel it's necessary. And it works.
To add something.
Yeah. To add something. And, you know, and there's certain things like obviously you don't want to play just until the pitcher pitches. Like you want to respect the game at all times. But anytime there's not gameplay, then I see that as an opportunity to engage. And even if, say, the DJ is playing, I might play along with the DJ because a lot of times I get mistaken for the DJ. Right. You know? So, it's just kind of, I just sort of look for any opportunity to sort of, you know, sprinkle it in because again, it's helping to create the atmosphere. And, people who maybe grew up with baseball up north and are used to the organ sound. I just like to create the sound.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what I specifically play is less important than just having the sound, the tone of the organ kind of resonating through the ballpark.
Well, when we first spoke 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think you were just doing the checkers at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And now, over the last 4 years, I've kind of watched on Instagram, and I've been to several games, of course, and watched the Greazy Keyz brand grow. So you are now also not only with the Charlotte Checkers, but you've branched out into baseball. So you are also doing the Kannapolis Cannonballers. You're also doing the Greensboro Grasshoppers.
Yes.
And you're also doing the Charlotte Knights.
Yes.
How did this all did it just domino effect?
Pretty much.
One team saw that and said, we'd love to have that. How do we do that?
Exactly. And me also reaching out and saying, hey, here are, I'd love to provide this. This has been a great way to engage your fans.
Right.
And they have been real receptive to that. And so, with baseball season, I'm looking to continue to grow that with, minor league teams.
Yeah.
Because I think, a lot of it stems from the Savannah Bananas, which if you're not familiar with them, they're sort of like this over the top.
Harlem Globetrotters of baseball.
You can say that, sort of like the Harlem Globetrotters. I've heard that they don't like that, but that's the best way to relate it. And if you experience that, it's just over the top. It's really kind of overstimulating. It's nonstop, just a clown show, honestly.
Right.
But it's fun. And I think with minor league baseball, they are able to kind of tap into that same sort of element.
Right.
And so they're looking for that same sort of fan engagement, which, not only at the organ can I provide that, but then I've incorporated the wireless keytar. So I'll take the keytar out and I can kind of roam around the fans and engage with them that way. And that's just been another fantastic element, just to enhance their experience. And again, to keep live music.
Right.
In their faces and something that they can see and hear.
And not sound awful about it, but being Greazy Keyz, you don't have to necessarily bring whatever you're doing with this team to that team.
Right. You
just bring, I'm Greazy Keyz, this is what I do.
Right.
And I'm bringing it to your place to help engage the fans.
Right. And again, it's every time is like I'm, proving myself.
Yeah.
I would definitely not, I don't feel ready to rest on my laurels with it, but I'm really fortunate that the momentum's there and I want to continue to grow that. And again, just kind of spread the love of live music. And if it can inspire someone else or another team, hey, you know what? We appreciate what Greazy Keyz has done. Maybe we'll hire our own organist,
Yeah.
Great too. I think that's wonderful because I think that's what we need more of.
Or maybe go on a tour. Hey, Greazy Keyz is going to be available during the summer.
100%.
Boom.
Yeah. Or, if any of the major league guys need a sub or something, I would love to be, considered on the short list. I would love to be,
Put that on your dream list, man.
It's there. Trust me. It's there.
I have a buddy of mine who, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
He does a national anthem.
Yes.
And he's been playing all these minor league baseball teams. Mm-hmm. And he just got to play Citi Field in New York where the Mets play. Not for the Mets, but for a soccer team.
Sure.
And then they're looking at possibly having him next year at Yankee Stadium. He's like, dude, that's just my thing to check off my wish list. This is something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, how fantastic is that?
I love that.
Yeah.
And so, for me to continue to kind of grow, that baseball season from April to August.
Right.
And have a little tour,
mm-hmm.
Around the Carolinas even. I would be just elated.
Dude, that would be awesome. Mm-hmm. How does it work out for you? You've got all these teams going on. How does it work out with, playing, scheduling, preparation? Forget side gigs right now, doing, performances somewhere. But let's just talk about the ball. How do you schedule that?
Well, luckily the team schedules come out pretty far in advance.
Yeah.
I already know, for springtime, what the schedule looks like. And
yeah.
I'm a team player. I'm very loyal. So, Kannapolis is still sort of my home base. So once their schedule comes out, it's in my calendar and I have it ready to go. And so then I'll kind of go and look at the minor league baseball schedule for the other teams.
Yeah.
And just kind of fill in from there.
Sweet.
And put together a promo package. Say, hey, how about Tuesdays at the Knights? We'll do Greazy Tuesdays. And maybe in Greensboro, we'll do like, Thirsty Thursdays with Greazy Keyz. And they've all been really receptive to that. And it's not like, no competition that way. It's been really fortunate to kind of just build it from there.
I'm going to have to send you an email because I just worked it out. My nephew works at Charlotte Knights.
Yeah.
I'm doing ticket stuff. And my choir is going to be singing the national anthem there in a few months in March or April. I have to
great.
Get off at the back. Man, I hope Greazy Keyz is there and make the kids come down. And
absolutely.
We got like a 60 member choir, kids choir, and we played at Kannapolis last year.
Right.
I don't think you were there during that one.
Right.
Man, kids rocked it, and they were like, "Oh, we love you guys." So you come back. Like,
yes.
All right, we'll see what happens.
And that's a great way to get plugged in, singing the anthem for schools and for performers, because it's not an easy song to execute.
I got to give it up to my kids. They rock it. I mean, they really do a great job. And the interesting thing is that not to be boring and sidetracked, but just how it's all handled. Like, the ball teams are just very professional about it and everything, but the waiting time for kids to get to sing it, the way they bring it out and stuff is tough on 8 to 10, 11-year-olds. So like, we're waiting. And if you have kids, what that's like. It's like, are we there yet?
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. There's a lot of behind the scenes activity that go on at games that, you just kind of have to learn to navigate.
So I guess it's safe to say at this point that Greazy Keyz has gone past the point of a nickname. It's currently becoming a quote unquote name brand, huh?
Sure, absolutely. I've actually trademarked the name Greazy
Seriously?
Keyz. Yep, it's trademarked.
That's awesome.
And I've been able to put it on merchandise and sell some T-shirts and a variety of different things. And it's been really, really awesome.
I think it cracked me up. I went up to your website the other day. You had 6 pages of merch.
Yeah.
I was like, man, look at this guy. I mean, and I got a hat here, which I'm going to take a picture with it later.
Yeah.
But, I'm happy to support, man.
Appreciate it.
So how did this turn about, doing the merch?
Yeah. So
like every artist, not to stop you, but every artist or a performer, even on the local level, we, try to sell a T-shirt or a CD or something like that, but you have got, forget CDs, like you've got T-shirts and hats and all this other things. So when did this start to get to really steamroll for you?
So, I think 2017 was the first year, fans started to kind of inquire about, T-shirts and things like that, at Checkers games. And so, I worked with, a local at the time, young artist named Jordan McLaughlin and said, hey, can you draw me up a little character of Greazy Keyz? And he did a fantastic job of me and like my little sweater and playing like a little guitar and Greazy Keyz underneath. And I just thought it was just awesome, and I ran with it and had a few shirts made with that logo, and they sold like crazy.
Yeah.
And so from there, it kind of snowballed for me there with working with a few different local designers and artists, and to come up where I have about a dozen different logos now.
That's awesome.
That I'll utilize for, T-shirts, hats, koozies have been really cool. At hockey games, cowbells, which has been a huge thing. Probably my most popular thing. Hockey pucks with the name, sublimated on there.
That's awesome, man.
And so I'm always looking for different little things to do that. Bar keys, open up beer bottles and things like that, and stickers. Probably stickers are probably the biggest thing though.
Was it your idea to kind of like, hey, I got to sell some merch, and then it just kind of started to roll? Or was it kind of like, I don't know, did somebody mention it? You know what I mean? Like most bands they'll do it and they'll have a T-shirt, of a recording or something like that. Well, you got like I said, you got a whole array of stuff now.
Right.
So it's, how did it come about?
Well, honestly, more of a just a way to help me continue to grow being the sports organist, because I'll be honest, it's not the best paying gig. Right. And as a professional musician, you kind of have to gauge, okay, well, do I want to go play in a wedding band and make X amount of money, or do I want to do this with a sporting team where, again, I'm kind of building from ground zero where yes, there's a value there, but what does it really bring for the team?
Right.
And so it started out selling merch as a way to kind of supplement the income on top of the game day pay. Well, okay, if I can make a little extra money selling some merchandise, that just supports me directly as well and helps me offset missing the wedding gig.
Yeah.
And it's just been phenomenal. And it's still a growing process. Like, it's been tricky. I've been very fortunate that the teams allow me to sell it on my own, and I've partnered with them some, but there's a lot of red tape when it comes to kind of getting plugged into team stores that, it's been, so far, I haven't really been able to overcome just because
it's Major League Baseball at that point. I mean, it's minor league baseball, but it's Major League's like, we're not selling your stuff. We're selling our stuff.
Yeah. So, but again, I'm really fortunate that they allow me. I'll literally, on top of setting up for the keyboard, and I'm setting up a little merch table. Yeah. And it's been fun. It's because if you go to greazykeyz.com, it's pretty much right now just a Shopify link.
Yeah.
That where, I've gotten my logo on just any number of things.
And then they can sell it, not to be nosy, but so you can sweatshirt,
Exactly.
And they come up with the sweatshirt, and then you just say, this is the logo. We're going to put it on this sweatshirt.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Which helps me because, I don't have to have physically
a store.
Right. And I do, but at home I do have bins of t-shirts and things that I keep on hand that you'll only find if you come see me at a game.
Right.
But that's a lot to carry around for just one person. So I try to figure out ways to offset that, and it's been really helpful, having a Shopify. It's not like super, super busy, but it does get some traffic and it does, make some sales and very cool things, like you said, like sweatshirts, or a really cool thing is the jackets.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the Letterman jackets with a Greazy Keyz logo on.
Nice.
And it's like, if someone really wants those, they can order right there. And I've sold a few of those, and I've actually got one that I bought as a sample, and I wear it because it looks so amazing. It really does.
We don't have video, and I'm just smiling as Jason says it because I think it's so wonderful that you have been able to grow this brand.
Yeah.
I'm big on being a local musician. Everybody is always thinking success. And there is monetary success, and there's other things that go along with that, but not everybody's going to hit that 0.05%, recording touring musician like the Rolling Stones, or the Taylor Swifts. Not everybody's going to hit that.
Right.
But if you can find success in your local community and get that support, where people recognize you, and when you play, they love seeing you, and then being able to parlay that into here's my merch, and people are like, oh, it's Greazy Keyz. I got to get a hat. I got to get stickers. I got to get. Right. I think that's fantastic, man. I think it is great.
Absolutely fantastic. And it's a dream come true. And it doesn't seem to be slowing down.
Yeah.
And I want to continue to ride the wave.
Yeah.
And see how far we can take it, because it's, a challenging part of it is the fact that it's kind of unique. There's other organists, but a lot of them don't seem to have the support that I have. Yeah. And I think, again, a lot of it is dependent on my accessibility.
Yeah.
The fact that when you come to the Checkers games, you can you now buy tickets in the Grease Pit right behind Greazy Keyz.
That's great.
And watch me engage, get on the Jumbotron, Chubby's going to come over and hang out with everybody. Yeah. So you're creating a moment, an unforgettable memory for folks. Whereas other organists, they're like in a crow's nest somewhere, or they're up in the press box, and they're not accessible. They're heard. People can tweet, oh, you sound amazing today, but they're not getting that interaction, that direct interaction. And I've literally had, NHL and Major League Baseball organists tell me, man, I'm really jealous of what you have. Or should I get me a moniker like Greazy Keyz? Should I do that? Asking their fans, because, it's something that's really special, and I don't take it for granted. Right. And I want to continue to grow it and be that.
There's also a mystery behind it. You said something, people know you by the moniker. They don't even know your name anymore. Right. So it's like, they see your face, and it's like, oh no, you're not Jason. You're Greazy Keyz.
Greazy Keyz. Oh yeah.
And you're that character.
And I love stories from friends who come up and be like, yeah, I was with so and so, and and said, I'm going to go to the Checkers game and I'm going to see my good friend Greazy. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know Greazy Keyz? You know Greazy Keyz?
I had one of my students say that to me. I said, yeah, I was at the ball game and I was seeing my friend, Jason. Did you know him? I said, have you ever been to the ball game? They're like, yeah. I was like, yeah, Greazy Keyz. And they're like, oh, yeah. You know Greazy Keyz.
Yes. Yes. And so that just, makes me so happy.
Yeah.
That I made that impact. And I'm saying it's so cool to, especially with kids.
Yeah.
And that's something where I want to grow as well, like community outreach.
Yeah.
Maybe talk to you about that, about, making appearances, school appearances for Greazy Keyz, pep rallies or things like that, because I've really found a lot of joy in that and would love to plug in because, I was a private teacher for about 18 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And enjoyed that, but, that could be challenging. You go in people's homes or whatever and you work with kids and it doesn't feel like it goes very far many times. Every once in a while you find that special kid who really gets it and you can connect and help them develop and you see them grow.
Yeah.
And even become, go on to school for music. But those were really rare for me. But as Greazy Keyz, I have numerous kids and parents come up to me like, when they saw what you're doing, they are just they want to take piano lessons now. They want to, what kind of keyboard would you recommend that we get,
That's awesome.
Our kid to play? Or I have young kids coming up, again with the guitar.
Yeah.
This past season, I've had 2 young boys come see me at a game and then make their own little guitar out of cardboard.
Yeah.
And their parents share photos with that.
That's
of
fantastic.
me. And again, just to make that kind of connection with young kids. And I'm talking like, maybe even pre-K, to like, 7, 8 year olds, just to make that kind of impact is something that, teaching private lessons I could never really make. And for me, that just brings so much joy. And again, it's just something that I want to continue to grow. And
you have more mass appeal at that point.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's almost like why does Gibson Guitars give endorsements to Slash and not some guy in New Jersey someplace?
Right.
Well, it's because Slash shows up and a billion people see who he is with the guitar, and that's identification.
Yeah, and I've had folks dress up as me for Halloween.
That's awesome.
So, again, it's a phenomenon, and it's wild, and it's been a fun ride. And again, I don't see it slowing down. I want to continue to kind of grow and see how it develops out, because they can't say no to any opportunity. So
you become like the Harry Carey of Charlotte. You know what
Sure.
Harry Carey is?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for those listening, Harry Carey is the old announcer for the Chicago Cubs,
Absolutely.
and everybody love Harry Carey. That's awesome. I just love it, man. I love seeing local musicians being successful in the music scene here.
Thank you, Matthew.
I think people just when they think music, it's only. Let's face facts. We all, as musicians, we want to do it and we want to make a good living doing it.
Right.
But not everybody needs to be international recording artist star. If you can find success in your local community, I think that's the best kind. And finding a local celebrity as you have, that even enhances it. You got to get one, may not have the other, $5 billion a year paycheck, but it's still this, and it enables you to open other doors
Absolutely.
to other things where, playing for the Checkers open doors for other teams.
Absolutely. And again, I just always look for opportunities. Like I said, community outreach is something that's been on my heart lately that I really want to kind of grow, and continue to impact, young kids in elementary school, middle school, high school even, and, make other appearances, maybe show up at some college games, UNC Charlotte or somewhere like that. I would love to bring the element of Greazy Keyz to some of those games as well. So
that's fantastic, dude.
Feels a little like limitless in a way,
But just as a side, that's not the only thing you do as Greazy Keyz.
No.
Like you've got the sports entertainment stuff that you're doing.
Yes.
Sports entertainment sounds like you're a wrestler. Doing the sporting events.
Yeah.
But you also still performing regularly.
Yes.
So on, Tuesday nights you were at Smokey Joe's?
Smokey Joe's, Tuesday nights.
Smokin' Jays?
The Smokin' Jays.
Fill me in. What are the Smokin' Jays? Is it just based off of Smokey Joe's or?
Well, it's a funny story. Okay. So Smokin' Jays. Okay. Smokey Joe's is a venue that's been in Charlotte it just celebrated, I think, their 40th year. And they're one of few freestanding venues like that left in Charlotte.
Right.
Where you go in, there's it's very eclectic. There's nothing but, Trotsky all over the walls, posters and everything. You go in, it feels like a dive bar. But they are passionate about having live music there most days of the week. And so Tuesdays is their open mic night. Okay. And the Smokin' Jays is the house band. And, it's kind of funny. It's kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. There was, back in the day, there was a band called Static that sort of hosted for a while. Okay. And then, different other musicians. But then, Lord, it's probably been about 15, 16 years ago when James Brock, who's sort of he's the drummer, Brock, but he's sort of like the core member. He was putting together, a new band, and it was me, him, Jeremy Shaw, and Janine Conroy. So all Jays. So Smokin' Jays. Ah, okay. Smokin' Joe's, Smokin' Jays. That's where that name kind of came into play. And then, as it kind of ebb and flow, like I took a break, and my good friend Colby Dobbs was in the house band for a minute. And then John Shaughnessy was on bass, but now we have Paul Agee, and then different guitar players, Dan Hood and Jeremy Shaw, and now we have Chase Kilo, and then we have Omari Wilkerson, who's a fantastic live singer, MC for the night. So that's the core group now. So you have Omari, James, Chase Kilo, Paul Agee, and myself. Okay. And then, and so we're there most weeks. During the baseball season, I get a little bit, in and out. But I have my good friend, Uncle Grub, will come in and fill in for me. And so we have basically a Smokin' Jays collective now.
Gotcha.
We have the core band, and then we have,
collective musicians who cycle in.
And so, week after week, it could be different. You could have the original Jays, or you could have some sort of, configuration of us with some other fill-ins. Okay. But it's always fantastic. Again, it's mostly music based. It's not a spoken word open mic. And it's not an open mic where you can bring tracks. It's either you come in and play your own instrument, or you have the band back you up, right. Or, we throw together a band right then and there and we'll jam on something. Yeah. And you could have, covers, original music, whatever, but it's all music driven. And it's a great time. It's usually pretty full. It runs from 9:30 p.m. till about 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, which can be tough.
That's late for Charlotte too.
It's kind of late, but but there's other open mics in town that I do earlier. Sure. But it's really cool because we do draw the amateurs and people maybe who just getting their feet wet, performing out, and we encourage that and help support that. I love playing with amateur musicians and then see them grow and develop. And then sometimes we get some really heavy hitters come through in town who are just looking to blow off some steam, and we'll get together and jam.
That's nice, man.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Do you guys ever go out and perform elsewhere under Smokin' Jays?
Yeah, Smokin' Jays. Sometimes we get booked out like the old Mecklenburg Brewery. We've played there before. A couple of private events, very rarely, because we're all very busy with our own other schedules. Yeah. But every once in a while it lines up for maybe about 3 or 4 gigs a year. We'll get out and play like the Comet or somewhere like that, somewhere local that we can kind of just have a night dedicated to just the Smokin' Jays, which is a killer band, and we could play 3-4 hours of music together. Dang. But we'll do a half-hour set at the beginning of the night. Yeah. And then the rest of the night is whatever happens.
That's amazing, man. I just love seeing all these. Charlotte has got such a little eclectic scene, and it's in pockets everywhere.
It kind of is, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I find that just doing the solo acoustic thing or the duo acoustic thing, for whatever reason, I've gotten to know a whole bunch of people who do the acoustic stuff, and that's because I run in that circle. Right. I don't run in the full band circle. I'm not out there playing, so I don't know all the main cover bands in town. Right. I know a couple. Yeah. A couple people here and there with that, but it's kind of interesting. And again, that's one of the reasons I like doing this podcast. I've said it so many times. I get to meet people that I normally wouldn't because I don't run in those circles. Yeah. And then you sit down with somebody for a couple of hours and you talk to them, and now you're like, man, how did I not know you before? How does it not work?
It's amazing. So, and I've had that experience like here. Like I said, I moved to Charlotte and got plugged in right away in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. So, the past 25 years or so, I've met a lot of people, but there are still new people. Every so often, it's like, people that I've maybe heard the name of, or had no idea, and you just meet them and you got a chance to jam with them or play with them. It's like, wow, this is really cool. And you develop a new friendship. So
it's funny you say that, because I've noticed lately, so looking at social media, advertising, who's playing, and I used to know, maybe not personally, but I used to see the names and I was like, oh, okay, these people are playing, these people. It's gotten to the point that Charlotte has grown so much and there's so many people moving here and musicians playing that I don't know most of the people anymore.
Right.
I know staple people that have been around for a while. I've had conversations with, I've gigged with or done stuff with, but there's other people I'm like, I have no idea who this is.
Right.
I know. Have you had that experience where you just haven't, you see
absolutely.
people and they're like, what?
Absolutely. But that inspires me to continue to plug in.
Yeah.
Like not only with, the cover bands and things that I'm doing musically with the sporting bands, but also, original bands, bands that are still playing like Snug Harbor and places like that, which, thankfully Charlotte still has.
Yeah.
Where original bands can kind of come in and play. And so I've had an opportunity to record and play with some of those bands as well to kind of, where coming to Charlotte, at the time there was the Double Door Inn. Yeah. And then there was the Monday Night All-Stars. And those were the guys that young guys like me were enamored with. We would see them play and we're like, oh my gosh, these guys are just the cream of the crop. And they really were. Yeah. And fortunately for me, I became friends and ended up playing with a lot of those guys. Right. And so now, a lot of them have passed or even aged on. Yeah. And so I've kind of grown into sort of not yet old guard, but I'm an established
player
in town. Yeah, and so to reciprocate that, I enjoy plugging in with younger players and playing with on maybe their new records or playing an original show at Snug where, it could be a big crowd or it could be a small crowd, but I'm there, playing original music with these folks. So
that's great.
That's
dude.
Important to me.
Staying in the community. Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. That's one reason I like doing the podcast is that you plug in and you get to know people, and you talk to people all the time. Yeah. That you might not normally see. Right. And it's still interesting to me. Having done the podcast for so long, I mean, this is going on next year will be 8 years.
Amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's very cool, Matthew.
You see them and there's people on the podcast who have been on the podcast who are not around anymore. Right. Come to mind, Bill Hanna. Yes. Bill, wonderful jazz musician. Yeah. He was one of the first people on the podcast, who volunteered time to come on and talk and tell his story. And then there's other groups that were on the podcast as a group. They're not together anymore. Right. But those artists are, musicians are still in town. And it's kind of interesting to see kind of my career or your career, how everybody's career has gone. As you've gotten older and stayed in town and things happen. Right. So that's always wondrous to me.
Yeah. Change is inevitable. Yeah. For sure. But Bill Hanna, his mark is still on this town. He, taught at CPCC, had his, jazz jam every Wednesday at the Double Door. And now they have the Bill Hanna Legacy Jazz Jam Monday nights at Petra's, which again, you just see people who worked alongside Bill and then young people kind of coming in who are just blazing at jazz. And so it's just amazing to see that. And just bands kind of come and go. And for me personally, like when I first came up, I was in a band. Yeah. And I had a band and that was my band. Yeah. But, again, that didn't last long. Yeah. And so I learned pretty early on. And fortunately, I think as a keyboard player in Charlotte, it worked in my favor, because there aren't very many proactive keyboard players. So, I had that working for me. But I diversified. I play in a few different bands. So it's funny. People ask me, well, if you're not playing the checkers game, where's your band playing? And it's like, well, it depends on the week. Yeah. Because it could be any number of groups, that I might be playing with. And it could be covers, it could be original music, or it could be, me playing and singing myself. So
yeah, well, because you're not attached to any one thing. You're
Right.
like, I'm an independent musician, and
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
cycling in. It's not, my whole identity is not revolved around, let's say, not for anything bad, but Smoking Jays. Like, my whole
Right.
reputation is not wrapped around the Smoking Jays.
Right.
It's,
right.
Greazy Keyz.
Yeah. You're right. And I've learned to sort of lean into that.
Yeah.
And not, I don't have a problem being the side man. And I'm happy to work that way.
Yeah.
And play. And I always play for the band that I'm hired for, or I play for the song. I'm not looking to be like, well, I have to make sure it has Greazy Keyz' touch on it.
Right.
That everyone knows is me. I want to play to the song, but at the same time, I see the value in my experience and my professionalism and what it brings. And, and I hold true to that. And I know there's a value to that, I don't short sell myself,
Talking about being the side guy, and you say you enjoy it.
Yeah.
What is it that you enjoy about being the side
Right.
instead of being the quote unquote spotlight?
Well, I naturally am not a very extroverted person. I'm fairly introverted. And, but when it comes to performing, I've learned the ropes. I'm a professional. I know how to engage with folks and make sure they have fun.
Right.
But I'm not driven that way. Like, I'm not so much a songwriter as I am a performer. And so I also just get a lot of joy of hearing someone else's song.
Right.
Whether it be just them on acoustic or maybe a full band has already recorded and they just need to add some keyboard elements to it. I mean, that to me is a challenge. And how can I be tasteful and help support what this other songwriter's doing? And I'm just not driven in a way that, that I feel like I need to be the focal point.
Yeah.
Not
like, seeking it. Like,
no.
I gotta be it.
Right. And even, at the Checkers games, like, I appreciate the attention, but if I weren't getting that, I would be okay. You know what I'm saying? I'm really grateful for what the persona of Greazy Keyz has grown and has become and will become more of. But at the same time, that's not the singular driving force. Just the music itself to me is just.
And to your point, I mean, and not in a bad way.
Right.
People aren't there for you.
Right.
They came to the Checkers game.
Right.
For the game.
Right.
You are just an added bonus.
A bonus, yeah.
That we get this great music and this guy playing and we've got this persona here that's, it's something else.
Yes. Yeah.
Much like, God, I sound awful. So please don't hold it against me if you're a sports fan. The one thing I always said I loved about baseball is there wasn't that much extra at baseball. Whereas every time I would go to a football or basketball game, I always noticed they had to have cheerleaders, bombastic stuff going on.
Right.
Like I go see the Panthers and the Panthers come out and there's fire and there's this and there's jets flying over and they got this thing. Yeah. And I always think, please take it for what it's worth. It'd be a pretty boring game if the guys were just running up down the field throwing the thing. It would be just as much as baseball or a game like baseball.
Right.
Same with basketball. If you didn't have all this other excitement going to build up that game.
Right.
It would be as slow paced.
Right.
Because the guy gets the ball, guy gets tackled, whistle goes off, got to stop the play. It's not full on constant excitement.
Right. Yeah.
And much to your point before, playing music for it, that adds something and takes up those short, those lulls in the game.
Exactly.
And fills it up.
Yeah. Yep.
On time.
Yep.
So you were talking about just performing. You're doing the solo bands. You're sitting in with bands.
Yep.
You're doing your own thing.
Yep.
You're doing studio work.
Yes.
How much studio work are you doing these days?
These days it's sort of ebb and flows, like this past year, I've worked with probably a dozen different original artists.
Yeah.
And different styles. Feather Pocket is one, which, Jason Klein is the primary singer-songwriter for that band. And it's almost like a country folk.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of neat stuff. And then Late Night Special, Fred Hines, which that's a bit more pop rock. Has been a lot of fun. And then there's been a little bit of work with a local. He does film composing, and so I've done some keyboard work.
Was it Jason Hausman?
Well, he does his own thing. I have done some work with Jason Hausman. He's amazing.
Did you play with him at the his concert he did?
Not recently. I have played with him in the Shallow Sea.
I thought you were there.
No, but I definitely a good friend, and I've worked with him.
He's been on podcasts. Great guy.
Joseph Stevens is this guy's name, and he does a lot of the film composition for Rough House Pictures, which is based out of Charleston. Danny McBride. He's Eastbound and Down.
Okay.
Guy. The Righteous Gemstones.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah. So really, slapstick kind of comedy kind of stuff. But I get calls to do some more complex keyboard work for him and get to do some of that for him off and on.
So if you're doing studio work, or do you have a home recording studio that you do stuff out of and send it out, or you have to go physically?
I prefer to go out physically, but I do have, I've got a Logic set up at home, but I find that it's more time consuming.
How so?
Just because, in a bit, I'm a perfectionist, so I will get a song and I will spend several hours on several takes and try to feel like I'm getting it right. Whereas
time consuming for you.
Exactly. Whereas, if I show up to a studio, 2 or 3 takes and they're like, man, that's it. We got what we need.
Yeah.
And I'm out. And again, I just love that interaction with folks. It's time consuming at home because obviously there's other distractions, I have a wife, I have dogs, the dishes are full in the sink, like things that where my OCD, I think I'm easily distracted.
Yeah.
And will procrastinate. Whereas if I know I'm booked for a session, I'll go to the studio, get it done.
You can focus
and get out and and we move on. And as opposed to again, I will spend all day on a track that, I'll get what needs to be done. But again, I feel like I can be more time efficient if I just go into the studio. But I'm always happy if people want to send me tracks. I'm always happy to work it out.
I enjoy
especially if they give me a deadline. Give me a deadline. That's all. That's something I need to work on. It's like, hey, I'll be happy to work on your song. Tell me, you need it by Friday, or else, who knows?
I mean, I haven't done much of it, but the little bit that I have done, I've really enjoyed it, and I've actually been able to do it from home. So I can take that time and do it and be like, oh man, I hope this person likes this. And make sure it's perfect and send it back, because I think it's such a wonderful thing. Who do I talk to? Steve Stokel.
Yes.
And Steve had said he's in a band. I forget one of the band, and they are
Pop Co-op.
Pop Co-op.
Yeah.
They're geographically challenged or something like that.
Right.
Where all the guys in the band are from different parts of the country.
Yes.
So they just send tracks back and forth, and he's like, we'll do songwriting sessions at the same time writing lyrics so that everybody's live and entering into the doc. I think it's amazing.
It's amazing. It really is. And I've worked with Steve that way some, and he's tried to help me get plugged in with the software he uses. And again, it's just been on me to make the time to do that.
Yeah.
But man, I have the privilege to work on a song for Steve recently. That was a lot of fun. But it all depends on what week, who I might be working with. So.
Dude, you go down that rabbit hole of recording. It is, and I don't mean just recording yourself, like learning the software.
Yeah.
It could be a deep rabbit hole.
Absolutely.
Like you start learning the stuff. I've been doing it, and initially it started, okay, I want to record my own stuff, and now I'm like learning how to mix and master, and I'm taking courses online and joining communities, and I'm really into it. I'm like, oh man, I'm trying to get this better.
Right.
How do I get the sound?
Right. And it's, it's a whole other part of your brain.
Yeah.
Not only you performing and on your instrument, but then the digital side or the, technical side of it is, it's a lot for one person to kind of manage all and to master. So,
Sadly, you almost have to do that these days. Like,
yes.
Just relating to the things that you're doing, everyday musicians, most of us have to do or have multiple streams of income. You've got the sporting events that you play. You've got the gigs that you do. You've got the teaching that you do. You've got merchandise that you're selling. You've got, all this other stuff.
Yeah.
People don't realize it takes all these other things to do it.
Right.
Just to make that living as a musician.
Right.
And in one way, it's a wonderful thing. And the other way, it's not so wonderful because, like, you think about, like, let's say a rock band in the 60s or 70s. The record company paid them, and all they did was focus on writing that music. And that's all they did.
Yeah.
But then today's musician, you have to figure out how you're going to put food on the table. Nobody's giving you a record advance of $5 million to pay your bills while you work on that recording.
Yeah.
I've got to do this, not to mention, all the things that are involved with it.
Yeah. My understanding is that nowadays it's more of, if you're going to have a record deal, you already have to have it established. Like, they're not going to build you. They're not going to make you. You already have to be made.
Yes.
And they sort of piggyback on what you already have and can help you, I'm sure there are still gatekeepers in that whole industry that, if you're not bringing something to the table already established, already with money behind it, then odds are you're not really going to break in the way that you think you're going to break in.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the days of whatever, I'm going down and it sounds awful, but I'm going down to Nashville and I'm going to make it. Like, I don't think that's it anymore. Like you.
Yeah, no, you kind of have to be born into it.
Yeah.
Honestly. I mean, to think about, and it's probably really mind blowing to think of how many people there are that are really trying to make it musically.
Yeah.
And the very small number of people who are already born into it, it's like a nepotism kind of thing that they already have the money behind them. They already have the songwriters behind them, the established people that, as long as they're good looking or whatever, then they're already hundreds of steps ahead.
I mean, you're right. I just wonder where it's going to go because I'm a YouTube addict and I'm watching these videos about how much money, let's just say everything from touring musicians. So, let's say a band comes along and says, "Hey, Greazy Keyz, we're going to take you on tour with us."
Yeah.
Like people have a warped view of what those musicians on stage are making.
No. Yeah.
Like, and by the time you leave the house, take the trip and all this, you might have been better off playing a gig, at the local bar. You might have made $250 by the time it's all done.
Absolutely.
And then also people don't realize that these musicians doing this these days, you're not selling physical copies anymore, of course. And the money they're getting from streams is not what it was.
No. You have very few, I say that, artists who are out there obviously breaking in, super talented people, deserve everything that they've gotten, but they don't pay their bands much. So you might be in, like I heard a great example of like Billy Strings lately. I heard he books for $1 million a gig. Yeah. But his sidemen get $2,000 a gig.
And that's good.
That's good. But that's the same, but it ain't $1 million.
Yeah.
But it just shows the disconnect, or, between the artists and the bands sometimes.
Yeah.
And you think that there's a, all for one for all kind of mentality, and there's not.
Yeah.
There's not.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the classic, if you've ever seen it, Hired Gun movie.
Yeah.
Where they talk to, Liberty DeVito played with Billy Joel. He's like, I thought I was part of this brotherhood.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm Billy Joel. My name's on the recording.
Yeah.
Even though the band really contributed to making those songs.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, they're my songs.
Right. And that is, that's a struggle for a lot of folks, at our level. It's like you want to try to make it big, break it in with a big artist, but if they break, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go along.
Yeah.
Or that you're going to, cash in on it.
Yeah.
So, there's always that element of, looking out for yourself and trying to make the best decisions and not being a pushover, which, is something that I've had to learn, along the way. Even in Charlotte music scene, there's people who would take advantage of us in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And you would be left holding the bag, or, had a lot of time dedicated to a gig or a show or something. And then, here's your $100. And it's like, what the heck?
Yeah. Well, I always say, and people, it sounds awful to maybe when I say it, but, I've spent my career as a musician, like figuring out how am I going to make a living doing this? Cause this is all I want to do.
Right.
Just want to do music. Mm-hmm. How am I going to make a living doing this? And if you just go into it, that mindset of like, oh, I just want to play music and this, I think you're going to be a little disillusioned. When it comes to putting food on the table or putting a roof over your head, you've got to have money coming in. So how are you going to do that?
Right.
And the reality sets in that the industry has changed so much.
Yeah.
At least for record sales and things like that, that you may not make all that money. And the truth was, only a small portion of people were going to make that money anyway. Those millions of dollars and become those touring artists.
Right. And again, a lot of them have already established because they're the 0.00% born into it.
Yeah.
I mean, I really believe in that. I mean, you still have your breakthroughs here and there, but if you look behind the scenes, there's a method, there's a system for sure,
There is, and even though it's the quote unquote younger folks, look at Taylor Swift. She's going on to her 30s into 40s?
Yeah.
So she's been around.
Oh yeah.
quite a while.
20 years. Yeah.
She's not new.
No. Yeah.
You know? So who's the youngest, most popular artist who just made it,
Right.
who is selling out stadiums and stuff?
Right.
Nobody.
Well, I guess Billie Eilish. I think but she's already kind of been around for a few years, but again, if you look behind the scenes, I mean.
Yeah. But is she making millions like Taylor Swift? My point being is Taylor Swift is still selling.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's the hottest
stuff.
Hottest artist on the planet, you know, and you can't get away from her, you know. But if you look, they come from well-established money that if they didn't have to be musicians,
right.
They can obviously
could have did something else.
Right. And still be millionaires.
It works. I'm not saying, I have heard some things. There are things like that, man. And,
sure.
And
again, it doesn't discredit their talent whatsoever. Yeah. It just allows them.
They just have more of a machine behind them.
Right. And, it can, like I said, like the old days, they can immerse themselves in that talent and not have to worry about all the other aspects, of it.
Yeah.
Of the business.
We don't think about it.
Yeah.
Hey man, so, just change gears on you. You've been doing your own podcast recently.
It's been a lot of fun.
Tell me about it.
So this is through a great website called rbeatsradio.com.
Okay.
And they do online streaming actually all over the world, like globally.
Yeah.
And so they have an office here in Charlotte where they're just kind of plugging in to promoting Charlotte-based artists and musicians.
That's great.
Writers, people in, movers and shakers around town. And so I was able to be a guest on one of their shows, Local Music Somewhere, actually about a year ago,
right.
January of 2024, and just hit it off with them and got invited to be, a weekly host.
That's great.
So I'm hosting, a 30-minute live stream segment called Local Music Somewhere, where I'm having, local musicians kind of come in and kind of tell their story. It's quick. It's only like 20, 30 minutes of talking and then like maybe 10 minutes of performance at the end. That's live streamed. But then what's really cool is their team then takes it and produces it and makes these incredible reels and incredible stories that can be shared to Instagram.
Do they have the full clips like available on YouTube and
Absolutely.
stuff?
And then they'll share it to YouTube, the full clips, the interviews and everything. So, it's just been a really awesome opportunity again that I just don't say no to.
Dude, I think you've got I was listening to you talk before. I was like, he's got a good voice for podcasting.
Well, thank you. Man. Thank you. But, it's been fun. It's been definitely a growing experience for me.
Yeah.
Obviously I think the challenging parts are the intros.
Mm-hmm. How so? Wait.
Or, just for me, cause they're videotape as well. So to not feel like it's an awkward moment of like, hi, this is Greazy Keyz and welcome to another episode of Heartbeats, which I've kind of developed a bit of a rhythm to that, but I definitely felt like my first few were probably awkward as hell and maybe still are a little bit, but no, just the opportunity of again, just my brand, something that they've connected with. They also sponsor at the Checkers. So there was already that sort of connection there.
Oh, really? Just like that music stuff you're talking about.
So, hey, it's all about who you know, man. But again, it's just, something I never would have imagined, doing that. I've said yes to.
Yeah.
And I've been able to kind of grow into and sometimes they'll set me up with guests or I'll work on just inviting folks in. So I'd love to have you on there sometime as well.
Anytime, dude.
And we'll get something scheduled for this season. And they're looking at taking it one step further outside of that as well. Rbeats is got great management behind it and they want to continue to grow and develop and support the local scene here in any way that they can. And that will be another kind of, like, I don't know what you call it, like expositions and things like that, like features for artists and at some sporting events. So you might see some like pregame stuff at the Checkers coming up soon or at the Gastonia, Ghost Peppers games. I think they're in talks with them about, again, just having opportunities to feature, local artists, musicians, dancers, DJs even, to kind of have these, just elements of pregame that kind of invite people and draw them in.
Super cool.
Yeah.
A little inside baseball. Do you know who's coming on prior to doing the interview? Do they give you questions? Do you have to meet the people and, do you have to do your own research? Like, when I have somebody on, I've got to figure it out who's coming on.
I do. And that's been something that's been fun to do, is sort of, dig in and kind of do some research and figure out, find interesting questions. And a goal for me for that is trying to develop sound bites, trying to find, what's going to be a good question or statement that draws something interesting for them to say that then can be turned into a reel and shared on Instagram and get, 50,000 views.
Sure.
That's been kind of fun to kind of, so that's been my angle there is, it doesn't have to go in depth, but to try to find those little sound bites that can be used to develop and get the ball rolling. Cause I've seen that happen. It's been really cool, and it somehow hits the algorithm, and suddenly that one reel that I'm a part of has, 70,000 views,
awesome.
So that's kind of cool, and it doesn't have to do with anything with me musically. It's just more of me able to engage with the interviewee and them saying something really cool that then our Beats is able to kind of take and develop and produce it as a really cool.
And they're half-hour episodes?
Mm-hmm.
Just curious. So this podcast obviously is just audio.
Yeah.
Does it freak you out being on video?
It does.
Do you have to think about oh my gosh, am I dressing, because you could come over to the interview and I'm in sweatpants right now. I don't have to worry about it,
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I do think about my wardrobe, and a very funny question, or, one of my first interviews, they actually put up a little green screen behind me, and we'll have some kind of background, and I happen to wear a tie-dyed shirt that had some green in it.
Messed it all up.
Oh, well, it just looked funny. I mean, they still aired it, but you could see there were stripes of me that were invisible. So I learned quickly that, I can't wear anything green.
Yeah.
But you want to go in making sure my hair doesn't look like, a bird's nest.
Yeah.
You
can always do what I do, man. Just shave it all up.
Hey,
good.
You look sharp too,
But, when you're asking the questions, how long have you been doing this again?
This is coming up almost a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you, or do you feel that you've gotten better at asking the questions?
Absolutely.
I feel like since I've been doing the podcast, I'm if I'm on a topic with you, I can, in my head, I've got 4 questions. All right.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
See, that's really good. Yeah. And I do try to come up with like a list of questions that, help sort of engage in the conversation.
Yeah.
But I've been very fortunate in, getting people on who are very easy to talk to, just like this is very comfortable conversation. And before you know it, 20 minutes is gone like that.
Yeah.
So, you start out with, a little bit of background, and maybe also try to engage with, what's going on currently or anything coming up, musically, and then before you know it, they're performing in the studio, which is also a lot of fun too, because a lot of times I'll get to play along with them.
Oh, sweet.
So they'll come in with a song. We may have a moment to run it right before the podcast starts, but then it's kind of on the fly too. So they'll be playing acoustic, and I'll drop in some keyboards on it. So that's been a lot of fun to kind of do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. Branching out.
Yeah.
All right. I want to go another thing too, but I'm just curious. I've had this question in my head, and I normally don't ask it, but, you've been around for a while.
Yeah.
As a musician.
Yeah.
You've done a few things. Where do you feel you're at in your career? Do you feel that wow, at me as a kid, if you could talk to 15-year-old Greazy Keyz,
right.
Would you just kind of laugh and be like, I never thought I would get this far.
Right.
I'm much farther down the road than I thought I would ever be.
I would definitely say I've landed in a spot where I never would have imagined as a child. As a kid, I emulated rock and roll bands, wanted to be in a touring rock and roll band.
Yeah.
Thought that was the end all be all, and got to experience some of that. And honestly, getting married and having a family obviously changed a lot of those goals, where it became less centered about, being a rock star, but then being a father and a provider for my kids, but then still true to myself as a musician and trying to do that, and not really pursuing any other gigs, because for a while I did have a corporate job. Mm-hmm. And in 2009, when the economy collapsed, that job went away, but I was still teaching and moonlighting as a musician. And I was like, when the next opportunity came up for a corporate job, I was like, well, I didn't feel like there was any more security in that than pursuing what I was doing with music. And so, that to me was a big change, and obviously sort of redirected some of my priorities as far as I was happy to play in the wedding band, happy to do these other opportunities that in Charlotte, were the best possible paying opportunities, and still are in a lot of ways. Playing in a successful wedding band or in a busy wedding band in Charlotte is one of the main ways of making music and make a living as a musician in Charlotte that I've seen. Yeah. But definitely if I were talking to younger me, I would have given him more advice about just being true to myself and not, willing to be a pushover or so much of a yes man. I still am. I do like to make people happy. I do like to, and I will not turn down an opportunity to play or to perform if I can even squeeze it in. I will do it. That's still in my mindset. Right. So, but you do
have to rest, man. I took there's points where coming up that we're getting into the holiday season. Yeah. And most of the listeners know already. I'm a music educator during time, but I gig like crazy.
Yes, you do.
The last 2 weeks of the year, I said, you know what? I'm taking off, man. I'm just not going to play. I just want to relax. I'm off from with kids. Yeah. And I'm good. Yeah. Let me just kind of get myself set, and then we'll go ease into 2025. Right.
I'm hoping to someday reach, and I've been more mindful of that, is being more selective and being more mindful of taking time off. Yeah. But I've not yet been able to break from that habit.
That's the problem with most of us musicians. We're so used to the hustle. Yeah. Where I think there's an inner fear in the back of our head that if we turn it down, we might not get that call again.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're all independent contractors. We're always, there's no real paid time off. There's always, exactly. It's competitive in a way. Yeah. I personally don't try to approach it in a competitive way, but you can't deny it that there's a competitive industry. Yeah. And so maybe one day, but I would definitely say to myself, keep playing music, and that's what I tell kids is if you're passionate about it, keep playing it. I've been very fortunate to plug in with a wider community of friends. Yeah. And I still encourage kids that way. They ask, how did you do this? How did you get here? I was like, go to your jazz jam, go to your open mics, once you get old enough, or have your bands with your friends and continue to do those things. Cause, if you're passionate enough about it and you pursue it, I believe that, it'll happen. Yeah. And I'm just happy to receive what I've gotten and to any opportunity to grow it. As the Checkers, I think they brought me in because they liked the thought of having an organist, but I don't think they ever anticipated it being such a hype thing. Yeah. As opposed, to being we'll have the DJ for the hype stuff, and then when we lose, we'll have the organ player. So, I've made sure that that's not. You're not
just doing what you do.
Yeah, and I'm right there with the DJ, and bringing the hype as much as anybody.
See, and that's one of the things I don't think. Well, I shouldn't say I don't think. I don't know. Yeah. A lot of younger musicians, that's what's going to. They might not yet understand becoming a musician is being able to play is only a small part of it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other components. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to have really good interpersonal skills with people, being able to talk to people, absolutely, understand where they're coming from, fit their needs. This is what I can do for you. Right. You've got to show up. You've got to have a professional manner. You don't want to just show up and, looking like you're in rags. Right. For whatever event you're playing. You got to show up, play the part, say thank you.
Yeah. You're still providing a service. Yeah. It's a part of the service industry. Yeah. And, and again, if you're playing in a wedding band, you're mostly playing in nice country clubs. Yeah. Which there are parts of that, but then there's a separation there. Yeah. But some of the most incredibly gifted and talented musicians I know, their music will never be heard because they don't have those other set of skills.
Yeah.
They're not very personable. They don't like to interact with people, but they will create the most mind-blowing music you've ever heard.
Yeah.
That you're just like, does a human create those things? And why isn't this guy famous on TikTok, or why isn't he famous on, just in music in general?
Yeah.
It's because
it's more than one thing.
More than one thing. Yeah, it's more than that, and it's sad, but it's true. And, but yeah, like I said, I've never claimed to be the best at anything that I do, but I feel comfortable in my voice.
I think you can, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. But no, I feel comfortable in my voice and in my personality.
Yeah.
And I see how engaging with people at their level and talking with them is just always the best results. So.
Yeah, I always say the world is littered with amazingly talented musicians that nobody's ever going to hear about.
Right.
Because it's just a component. It's one of those things, You could play fast, you could be the best songwriter, but if you can't communicate and you can't talk to people and you can't be humble at times.
Right.
And you don't have a bit of a big business acumen as acumen.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean.
It's not going to work. You can't do it.
Yeah,
I mean, I've been at tons of gigs. I'm sure you've been at tons of gigs where you show up and you hear, the owner say, "Oh yeah, the band we had here last night, the guys were cursing and they drank too much and they were getting you know what I mean?"
Oh yeah, it ruins it for everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, those guys are not going to be here anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And you come in and you just do a superb job. They're just like, that's it. All right. When can we book you again?
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes that's all you have to do.
Right.
You don't have to be the most talented player in the room. You just have to be right there and professional and good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's enough to get by.
Right.
And
to get calls and get hired, and which moves on to other opportunities.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, I'm excited about what the future holds for Greazy Keyz, because I've been at it 10 years. At this moment, I've been a professional musician for 30 years, but 10 years as the sports persona Greazy Keyz. And I just don't see it slowing down.
Dude, I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. Every time I just, like I said, the last few years, it's really blown up, and I'm like, oh, dude, I get happy for people that I know when they start seeing the success. Especially if they're nice people.
Right.
If it's jerks, you're like, that SOB.
It pays to be nice. It really does. And, and fortunately, that's just my, the way I was raised, to be respectful and kind to others and compassion. I think that's lost in a lot of American society today, is compassion to other people. Yeah. And courtesy, being courteous and compassionate to other people. I think it's just so important. It's not all about the me, or trying to get ahead of other folks.
Yeah.
Another thing with Greazy Keyz that I've been able to, it's really touched me, is obviously with kids, but then also like neurodivergent people, like how people are drawn to it, and just making that impact too has just been really just softens my heart and just makes me want to just, continue to do that, to give them an outlet again, just because they never would have had an opportunity to experience or see a live musician in most cases.
Right.
They're not going out to bars and clubs.
Yeah.
They're usually stuck with their families and doing events. So to be there for that and to bring that to them and for them connect as well, it's just been a really cool blessing for me.
It's one of my favorite things when I'm playing a gig, and I'm fortunate. I see it all the time at school with my kids when I'm playing guitar, but when I'm at a gig and I'm playing and kids come up and they just start dancing and they're just like, just love it. And parents are like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And I'm like, "No, please don't be afraid." I was like, I love that.
Oh, absolutely. The young kids, and they're just so innocent, and they are just so, I don't know, just open to receive the music and to dance. Oh yeah, me too.
They don't interact with it on the adult level that we do. Like, we can only do this.
Right.
They're like, oh, I feel it. I'm going to dance.
Yes,
and I'm going to just
me too. Love that. And I see it at gigs. I see it at games. I see it all around. And to me, again, that's just another another joy.
So we've been talking about different ways that we got to connect with people, which brings me to my final topic I want to talk to you about, social media.
Yes.
How are you navigating social media as Greazy Keyz? Because I've had on musicians in a certain age bracket.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. I think everybody is still trying to figure it out. Like nobody knows exactly what you're supposed to do. You know, there's people who like, I'm going to post what I ate for breakfast that day.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And there are other people, maybe more do like myself, like I kind of try to keep it music related.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
So overall, I really love it. I engage primarily through Facebook and Instagram, a little bit on TikTok. That to me is like kind of over my head.
You doing TikTok?
A little bit, but it seems like, but that might be on its way out. I don't know. Recently they may be banning that TikTok, but you know, to me, and then a little bit on X, but to me, like X has fallen way to the dark side in a way that just doesn't seem to benefit, you know, anything musically that I can see.
I just never been a big tweeter person, and I think I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram and I've got my own website.
Right.
And I'm like, that's enough for me to try to keep up with it. I mean, and I've already got, like most adults these days, I've got that short, well, whatever you want to call it. It could be, I'm just easily distracted with my phone and I'll just start scrolling through. So I don't need another thing like to tweet about, you know?
And I know there's, you know, other softwares that can kind of put them all together, but mostly Facebook and Instagram. And my approach to those, obviously, I'll promote my music, you know, usually try to show where I'm playing and promote when I'm at a game. And then keep it pretty lighthearted. Like I don't like to engage politically or any kind of like off color. You know, I keep everything, you know, if I share photos, it'd be usually my immediate family or my dogs or something like that.
I'll do that on my personal account, not my musical account.
Right. And then so, and with music, it's just strictly, you know, here's where I'm going to be playing this week. And then, but I've gotten into, particularly with Instagram, you know, it seems like they've kind of moved more toward the stories and the reels, you know, where you make the short videos. And with those, it's kind of wild because, you know, if you look at the averages that, you know, you may make a minute or two long video, but the average view is only like 9 to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So, you know, I still like to do those, and especially lately with trying to build, you know, the Grease Pit, promotion with the Checkers is I've gone live and we'll kind of hype those up, or the R Beats, sessions. I'll go live, and I've seen some really cool, feedback from those.
Okay.
More than I would have imagined. But yeah, it's tricky because it is very time consuming. Yeah. You know, you want to kind of create content that people engage in, but I haven't gone as far as like, I've not verified. You know, that's the whole thing where you pay and get verified, and you can, which I'm sure that opens a few doors for you.
What, on IG?
Yeah, Instagram or Meta. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't done the Meta. I'm pretty sure
But you can do, and you probably can get verified on one or the other, or you can pay to have both.
Yeah.
And I just haven't took that leap yet, which, you know, maybe this year will be the year.
I thought I did, but I'm not paying for anything like that.
Right, exactly. It's like, why am I going to pay for that? But, you know, we'll see. Maybe this year I'll give it a shot. But so far I've been happy with the overall engagement, you know, that I get. You know, my posts, you know, I've got like 4,000 followers on Instagram, which is pretty cool, and then a few thousand on Facebook. But yeah, for me personally, like on the professional side, I tend to like Instagram a little bit better. But yeah.
I like it that I can connect with the only thing I like that I can connect my Instagram to my Facebook.
Yeah.
But the only thing I don't like is that I can't, there's certain things with a quote unquote business Facebook account.
Right.
Like I have my musical Matthew Ablin Facebook. Yeah. I can't join certain groups.
Really?
Under that moniker. Yeah. There's certain music stuff that's like, no, you have to have your, like, your personal account.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, this is me.
Right.
You know? Just under a different thing, they won't let you do it. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, sometimes I'll have to repost, like if I'm going to go into groups and I'm going to advertise for the month. You know, this is where I'm going to be for December performing. I have to join that group under my personal account and post it.
Interesting.
Particularly even if I advertise the podcast. I do the same thing. I can't do it other ways.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. Yeah. It's, I just try to stay consistent.
Yeah.
Try not to let it suck up too much of my time. But again, like in today's, industry, it's sort of, you can't do it without it. I know it doesn't really replace traditional means of marketing and things like that. But it's just the best, easiest way to reach at least a few people. I know there's algorithms and again, if you were to boost your things and pay for it, it would reach more people. But at the same time, so much the AI to me is becoming like so much of it is becoming so dependent on AI that, I don't know how much longer it'll all last, really. I mean,
it'll get weird. In the next 5 to 10 years,
yeah.
I think it's going to get weird.
And again, with AI music and just, the photos and movies that they're able to kind of manipulate.
Yeah.
And AI is just scary.
Yeah.
And I could see where it could turn a lot of people off from it, or just make it hard to want, or for me personally, I can take it for face value. Like I don't lean into Facebook and Instagram to get like news and things like that.
Right.
Like, because again, it's everyone's just kind of putting, the best foot forward. At least that's what I do. I'm not sharing my troubles on Facebook, I'm just sharing my wins and positive things. So, it's just not the source of news or anything like you want to have.
Well, there's a lot of problems today with young kids. They look at Facebook and Instagram and they see all these people doing these amazing things and they don't realize that whatever, that influencer in front of a Lamborghini, it's not their Lamborghini. They're just taking a picture in front of the car. Right. And most people, keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, we're doing these fabulous vacations. Oh, look at this. Oh, you're seeing the family on a beach in Jamaica and they're having a wonderful time. But they don't show you the other 3 days where the mom and the daughter got into a fight and the father's mad, got in an argument with somebody else. They're not showing you that.
Right.
They're just showing you the beach.
Right. Yeah. It's wild.
Look how wonderful my life is.
Right. So, it's a weird balance, to try to keep, push out the best things, but not take in so many negative things, because it can really affect you. I mean, I definitely, I've been affected, from just, like I said, just the oversaturation of information. It's not good for the brain rot. I mean, that's the term now. And so,
yeah. Well, I do like that people are able to cross promote. Like, if I put something out, then one of the venues I'm playing at we'll take the picture and they'll share it that we're playing here, or I can meet and check up on other musicians like yourself and be like, all right, where's Greazy Keyz this weekend? What's he playing?
Yeah.
All right, great. I can check out somebody's calendar events and I can go see them and connect. It's just funny talking about podcasting, how many people in the local music community I've never met, but they friend me on Facebook because, I'm one of the local musicians. So it's okay. Now I've got all these people.
Yeah. And I enjoy that aspect of it, getting new fans, from games.
Yeah.
And then again, and getting that engagement and then turning around and they're showing up at games and buying a t-shirt from me. So I really do appreciate that aspect of it for sure.
Well, man, I'm going to start wrapping stuff up with you because I know you got a gig shortly and I don't want to keep you, man. You're a busy dude. You're a busy dude. So I
appreciate it so much for having me on.
Yeah, man. Greazy Keyz, thanks for stopping by, brother.
My pleasure. I can't wait for the third time.
All right, man. Take care. Thanks for listening to episode 82 of the Queen City Music Podcast. And I hope you'll go back and check out past episodes. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends. As always, if you have an idea for an episode or would like to be a guest on the QCMP, reach out to me at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out our local partners, Records on the Wall at rexonthewall.com, Reporting from 20XX at reportingfrom20xx.wordpress.com, Queen City Live at instagram.com/Queen City Live Music, and Charlotte New Music at charlottenewmusic.org. Until next month, get out there and support the local Charlotte music scene by hearing some of the talented artists who call our city home. And have a happy and safe new year.